Good morning. Welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. We're going to be getting into taxes as we've been talking about this morning. The filing deadline is upon us, not far away here, July 15th. Definitely, you know, the closer you get, the harder it is to get in to see your tax person and get these things taken care of. Has this changed, by the way, Friday, the way you mentioned refunds? Has anything changed with this year for that? If someone's getting money back, in other words, is there, I mean, they could have filed any time, right? The deadline is the 15th, but you could file any time in between, any time that you had all your stuff this year and get that deduction. Has that been, or I'm sorry, that refund, has that been delayed in any way?
I mean, it's taking them longer to get, if you file electronically, it's taking closer to the 21 days than the 10 to 12. They've always said 21, so it's still within their time. But if you're mailing in your return, I will tell you, if you mailed it in early March, they're still sitting in the mailroom. We have gotten the information from the IRS that staff has not yet entered back in. So if you mailed in a tax return and you are expecting a refund, it may take several more months before those are actually processed and checks are sent out.
Okay, so this is one of those, again, planning ahead is a good idea. Now, for those also that may file an extension, you can still do that up to, you mentioned it just is still just to October 15th is going to be the latest you can wait to file, right? And what
Correct.
You have
there you go. As far as I know, they're keeping that. Yes.
Yeah, and then we have to file, if you do file that extension, but you're going to owe taxes, you still have to pay those. So no news on that front. You know, get it done. And then one of the things that if you have for your self-employed, if you've got the ability to set up a SEP, and I believe a Simple works the same way. Am I correct as far as that October 15th deadline?
You're the expert on that one. I'm going to say I think so, but I've always went with IRAs and Simples on April 15th, which of course is July this year. SEPs they extend to the extension of your extension, which would be October. I do want to put out really quickly, the IRS did put a notice out yesterday saying, remember, they extended, if you haven't filed your 2016 and you have a refund, you have until July 15th to file and receive that refund. If you do not file it, you will not receive that money. I mean, you only have 3 years that the IRS will allow to go through. So just as a point of interest, you have, if you haven't filed your 2016, you do need to file it and get your refund. Otherwise, the IRS will not refund the money if you're past that deadline.
Okay. One of the things, by the way, on that QCD I want to talk about, qualified charitable deduction, we had the caller earlier on. You can, there's a cap on that. The most you can contribute to charities is $100,000 for that year, and it can count towards your required minimum distribution. So I mention that because it's not necessarily limited to your required minimum distribution, but you can, if you've got RMDs, you can, and it is tied to it. So this year, though, because of that changeover to allowing for age 72 instead of 70 and a half, they did not, though, change the rule with regard to the qualified charitable deduction. So you can still, at 70 and a half, so if you turn 70 and a half this year, you wouldn't be subject to an RMD, but you can still do a qualified charitable deduction. So again, check with your tax person, financial person on that. So it's a little benefit, you know, that you can still do that. And, and again, for the amounts that you can do are not necessarily limited to RMD, but are tied to it just happens to be tied to the time when you take RMD or to that age. Now, it's 70 and a half, though, hasn't changed for QCDs. When it comes to taxes, we talked about the Secure Act a little bit as well, right? That one, have there been many changes other than what we talked about? Anything else that we missed, or do I want to move on to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act?
I think we want to move on. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act definitely had a lot of changes that affected the everyday taxpayer.
This is one of those, and this passed at the end of 2017, as we mentioned, affected you already. You were subject to that in 2018. Now this is the second year, and the biggest thing to understand is the changeover from having a lower standard deduction. It's almost double what it was, and the exemptions that we had, to where no exemptions now, with the exception, I guess, of tax. You still have tax child credits, and that's been improved, right?
Sure, you have the Savers credit, the child credit, the college credit, the educational credits. There are still some, yes.
So for most people, are you finding that their taxes are that they're paying less tax than they were prior to the for the Tax Cuts and Job Act?
Absolutely, and statistics have shown it. Not everyone feels it because two things. One, because of the tax rates, right? We know that we went down at least 3% in different areas, a little less as you get up to the higher areas. They also have increased the child credit for children that are 16 or under. They doubled it. And the standard deduction doubled. And many people, that gives them, I mean, we do a lot less itemizing than we did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, just, you know, everyone's mortgage and things, married couples coming up with more than $24,000 of itemizing is difficult. Now, a lot of times people are like, I really want to itemize, you know. If they're giving it to you for free, itemizing is not important.
This is one of those things that people don't, you know, as you said, if you're having less taken from your paychecks, the amount of money you're getting to take home went up. So that was one offset with the raising of the standard deduction as to why people aren't seeing necessarily a bigger tax refund is because they're showing up in their regular paychecks. But we're still seeing.
Well, that's it. I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just saying, I think we're still seeing where, you know, and the new W-4, I will say, is confusing individuals. They're having a difficult time. We're finding that some of the people aren't having as much. They're ending up with more withholding than they expected because of the way the W-4 words things. So just, you know, if you're owing money, you do need to adjust your W-4 form. It's that simple.
Yeah, this is, so here's the, exactly, and this is one of those adjustments that, you know, you can, you know, talk to your employer, make sure that sufficient amount is being withheld to fit your comfort level of where you want to be with regard to your taxes each year. Certainly that you're having enough withheld to pay those taxes or come pretty close to it. Stay within that $500 range, let's say. When it comes to planning too with the it changed the brackets, and this is another big one, understanding this sunset provision. So we're going to, you know, when we're talking about tax planning, it's recognizing that basically in about 5 years' time, we're going to revert back to what taxes were prior to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Have you had anyone that talks to you, Friday, about that? I know I deal with it all the time and with my clients, of course, because we're planning ahead. We're thinking into the future of the effects. So again, with the Roth conversion is another area that comes in. But to be thinking if my taxes, if I know basically, unless Congress acts to change it otherwise or make it permanent, I know that in 5 years, the way it is right now, my taxes are going to go up. You know, that 12% bracket is going to be 15, the 22% bracket is going to be 25, and so on up the road. So I want to make sure that anything I can do today to take advantage of these low tax rates, this is the time to do it.
Well, I think that's why partnering up with someone like yourself is always great for my firm. Most of the time when someone comes to me, they're looking at maybe 2020, maybe 2021, maybe a year or two out. They very rarely are looking at 5 years, which is important because many times from the tax standpoint, I sit there and say, well, this is what they could get this year. You're like, yes, but in 5 years, they could end up paying this much. If we spread it over the next few years, they're going to end up with a better tax picture overall than that instant gratification.
This is one of the things. It's not just, you know, as we say, it's not just what you make, it's what you keep. When it comes to keeping more of your money, that's a big part of paying less tax. And it's not just what you pay this year. Imagine if you're saying, oh, I'm saving money, and yet you've still got room within that 12% bracket to do some Roth conversions, which means even after the 5 years, you're going to be able to maintain a lower bracket and save money. This is one of those, when I'm doing a Roth conversion analysis with clients, I'm always looking forward to what it's going to be down the road, not just this year. All right, we're going to take a break. Dr. Friday, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll talk again soon. And join me here because we'll be right back on the Retirement Report.